Hey everyone, and welcome. Have you ever looked at the American education system and just thought, wow, that seems complicated?
It definitely can seem that way.
Yeah, with all the different types of schools, high school, college, community college, universities, it feels a bit like a maze sometimes. So today, we're doing a deep dive. We're tackling the American education system from high school to college.
Good topic.
Right. Our goal here is pretty simple. Cut through that complexity, give you the clear picture, the essentials, so you feel genuinely well-informed about, well, a really key part of American life.
Absolutely.
So just to sketch it out broadly, the journey usually starts young, right? Elementary, then middle school.
Yep, standard enough.
Then comes high school. That's typically for students aged, 14 to 18?
Around that, yeah.
And that's a really pivotal time. It's preparing students either to, head straight into a job or, for a lot of them, move on to higher education.
And that's where the paths really start to branch out.
Exactly. After high school, the choices just explode. You might look at a 2-year community college first.
Which are great options, by the way. They offer associate degrees, and they can be a really smart way to step up to a 4-year university later.
Definitely. Or you could go straight into a 4-year university, aim for that bachelor's degree right away. And then for those who want to specialize even more, there's graduate school master's degrees, PhDs.
So many layers.
It really is a system built on, well, a lot of options.
And, it's interesting to think about why understanding all this matters, especially for you listening.
Go on.
Well, if you're maybe from the US or the UK, you've probably been through something similar. This is a chance to kind of reflect on that, maybe see it differently.
Right. Compare notes.
Exactly. But if you're an English learner, maybe listening from Asia, Africa, Europe,
Yeah.
understanding this system is honestly invaluable if you're even thinking about studying in the US.
Yeah, I can see that.
Knowing how high school sets you up for college, what terms like GPA mean or SAT.
Oh, yeah, the acronyms alone.
Right. And knowing the difference between, say, a community college and a big university that gives you a huge leg up. It's not just about being smart enough. It's about understanding the culture of learning there, the pathways available.
That makes a lot of sense.
And our sources point out some really key things here. For example, the U.S. system often encourages a broader education in high school compared to other countries where you might specialize much earlier.
Less pigeonholing early on.
Kind of, yeah. And even in the first couple of years of college, picking your main subject, your major, might wait. It fosters a sort of breadth.
Interesting.
And another big one, extracurricular activities. Things like sports, drama club, volunteering. They're not just side activities.
No, they're huge in high school.
Exactly. They really shape the experience. And they actually matter a lot for getting into college, too.
That's such a crucial point because, education really does shape futures, doesn't it? It opens doors, helps you grow, prepares you for the world.
Couldn't agree more.
And for our English learners tuning in, talking about this stuff, schools, degrees, plans, it's fantastic practice for using specific academic words and just discussing aspirations.
Definitely useful vocabulary.
Okay, then. Let's really unpack this. Let's dig into how these different parts actually work and feel.
This is good. Where should we start? High school.
Yeah, let's start there. So we mentioned the broad structure. When you think about American high schools, what's the first thing that kind of jumps out as being distinctive compared to many other systems?
Well, maybe it's superficial, but thanks to movies, mostly, it's the whole social scene,
Yeah, like what?
Blockers lining the hallways, the big school dances like prom, the football games under the lights. It just paints this picture of a really holistic experience. It feels like more than just hitting the books, which can sometimes be the main or only focus elsewhere.
That's so true. The social side is definitely big, but it's also tied into something else you mentioned, the sheer choice in what you study.
The academic breadth.
Yeah. I remember in my high school, you could be taking advanced placement calculus, like really tough stuff, but also pottery or theater, or I think we even had an auto shop class.
Wow, quite the mix.
It really felt like you could explore different interests, before you had to lock into a specific path for college.
That variety is definitely noticeable. But does that raise a question? Maybe. Does focusing so broadly mean you don't get quite as deep into one subject early on?
That's a fair point, a potential trade-off.
In some systems, you pick your track sciences, humanities, whatever, much earlier. Maybe those students get a more intense specialized foundation in that one area.
It's possible. I think the American idea or ideal is more about building that comprehensive foundation first, helping students discover what they're actually passionate about instead of maybe forcing a choice too soon.
Okay, discovery over early depth.
Yeah, something like that. And it's not just classes, right? It loops back to those extracurriculars you brought up.
Right, they're a huge piece of this whole person idea.
Totally. I learned so much playing soccer, being in the debate club, things like teamwork, thinking on my feet, leading a group. You don't always get that from a textbook.
No, you really don't. And that focus on the whole person is definitely uniquely American in many ways. I remember a friend visiting from Europe was just baffled that U.S. colleges actually asked about your sports teams or clubs on the application.
Yeah, it surprised people.
It's not purely about your GPA, your grades, essentially.
Right, your grade point average, that number summarizing your marks.
Yeah, or just your scores on those big standardized tests like the SAT or ACT.
Which are important, don't get me wrong, but they're only part of the picture.
Exactly. It's a more holistic view they're trying to get.
That holistic approach is really key. And then thinking about moving on from high school, college itself. The whole experience of often moving away, living in dorms, maybe joining fraternities or sororities. That's a very distinct American university culture, too.
It certainly seems like a powerful experience for fostering independence, building a whole new community away from home.
It can be, yeah.
But that also brings us to a pretty significant point, doesn't it? The cost.
Yes. The elephant in the room sometimes.
American college education, especially at private universities, can be incredibly expensive. That's a really stark contrast to many countries where university might be low cost or even free.
It's a massive issue. Accessibility is a huge discussion.
Even with scholarships and financial aid, it puts up barriers for many. It really raises questions about equity in the system.
You've definitely hit on a critical challenge, no doubt about it. And yet, sort of the flip side is American universities are famous worldwide, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. For their research, the resources they have.
The flexibility in designing your studies, even mixing different fields. And we should also really highlight the diversity within the system. It's not all Ivy League or huge state schools.
Good point. You have everything from massive public universities serving tens of thousands of students down to small, very intimate liberal arts colleges, maybe focusing more on undergraduate teaching.
And critically, those community colleges we mentioned earlier.
Yes. Let's not forget them. They're such an important piece.
They really are. Often way more affordable, serving local populations. They're a fantastic entry point. You can get an associate degree, maybe get skills for a specific job, or use it as that stepping stone to transfer to a 4-year university to finish a bachelor's.
They really function as a crucial pathway for millions of students, not just a waiting room.
Absolutely not. A real pathway. So, okay, if we kind of step back and look at the whole journey we've just discussed, what's the big takeaway? This deep dive into the American system, high school through college, it seems like despite the real challenges like cost and complexity, the defining features are maybe this emphasis on choice, on breadth, and a kind of holistic view of education, trying to develop more than just academic chops.
I think that's fair. What's fascinating here, I think, is how the system, maybe intentionally or maybe just how it evolved, seems designed to produce well-rounded individuals.
Right.
Often delaying that super deep specialization to encourage critical thinking, maybe adaptability.
That makes sense.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, understanding this combination, the flexibility, the focus on extracurriculars, the sheer variety of institutions, it really does offer a much deeper insight into American society itself, its values, its priorities, and maybe how it's constantly trying to figure things out, constantly evolving.
Yeah, that's really well put. I really appreciate diving into this with you. It's genuinely fascinating how many different factors shape the educational journey in the U.S.
It is complex.
Definitely makes you realize there's always more going on beneath the surface, you know?
It does. And maybe that leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to sort of chew on.
Okay, let's hear it.
This raises an important question, I think. How might this particular American balance the broad education early on, the delayed specialization, the heavy weight on extracurriculars? How might that uniquely prepare individuals for a future world? A world that seems to demand both very deep, specialized knowledge and those really adaptable sort of soft skills like collaboration and communication.
Ooh, that is something to think about. How does this specific recipe shape people for what's coming next?
Exactly. What are the strengths and maybe the weaknesses of that approach in the face of future challenges?
That's certainly food for thought. Well, we really encourage you to keep exploring this topic if it interests you, and think about how it connects or maybe contrasts with your own experiences and learning path.
So our mission, like always, is to pull out those key nuggets of knowledge for you, give you that shortcut to being really well informed. We're focusing especially on, that journey from high school into higher education.
Right.
We want to make this whole landscape feel clearer, more insightful for you.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is that this isn't just about listing the stages. It's also about giving you the actual language, the vocabulary, the grammar bits, the phrases people really use.
Exactly.
So you can join the conversation confidently. We want you to get not just what these things are, but sort of why they matter in the bigger picture, what they actually mean for students and families navigating the system.
Absolutely. And to really get it, we'll start at the beginning, right? The K-12 years, elementary, middle, high school.
The foundation.
Then we'll move into higher ed college, university, and importantly, community college too.
Becoming more and more vital.
We'll break down terms like bachelor's degree, GPA, that's grade point average, and those big tests, the SAT or ACT, but not just definitions, right? We want to explore what they actually mean for a student's path.
Yeah, their real impact. And we'll also unpack things like extracurricular activities. Sometimes people underestimate those, but they really show the whole person.
Oh, definitely. Colleges look at that.
They do.
Yeah.
And critically, we have to talk about affordability. That's a huge concern, the elephant in the room for many.
Can't avoid that one. And beyond the system itself, we're digging into the language you need, like using modal verbs can, could, should to talk about choices and possibilities.
Right, like saying you can explore different majors, or maybe they could start at a community college.
And students should research financial aid, those kinds of things. Plus, we'll look at natural phrases people use, like it's a stepping stone to.
Or you hit on a really important point there.
On the flip side, stuff that makes you sound fluent.
Yeah, makes the conversation flow. And we'll flag a couple of common pitfalls too, like the difference between study and learn.
Well, that's a good one.
And how Americans use high school versus college. Little things that can trip you up but make a big difference.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So starting right at the beginning, elementary school. That's where it kicks off, usually around age 5, up to maybe 10.
Typically, yeah. Ages 5 to 10, sometimes 11. And it's more than just, reading, writing, arithmetic. It's about building those social skills, maybe sparking that initial curiosity for learning, hopefully.
Right, laying the groundwork. Then comes middle school, ages maybe 11 to 13.
That's right. And middle school is interesting because it's really a transition. It's a bridge. Kids often get exposed to more subjects, different teachers for different classes.
A bit more independence.
Exactly. Preparing them for what's next, which is high school, they start exploring interests in a bit more depth, maybe.
Which brings us to high school. The final stage before, whatever comes next. Ages 14 to 18, usually.
Generally, yeah, 4 years.
Now, high school, it's not all the same, is it?
Yeah.
You mentioned nuances. We hear about public schools, private schools, charter schools. What are the key differences there that someone should understand?
You've hit on a really important point there, because the structure might seem similar, but the experience can be quite different. Public schools are the most common, funded by taxes, open to everyone in the district.
Yep.
Private schools charge tuition. They might have a religious affiliation or a specific focus. Class sizes might be smaller.
And charter schools, they're kind of a hybrid.
Sort of. They get public funding but operate more independently.
Yeah.
They might have unique teaching methods or missions. So yeah, the type of high school can really shape the curriculum, the resources, the opportunities. It's a major choice for families if they have options.
That's a really crucial distinction to make. Okay, so after high school, the path often leads to higher education. College or university, typically 4 years. But let's talk about community college first. What's its strategic role, especially for someone weighing costs or maybe unsure about a 4-year commitment right away?
Community colleges are often, game changers. They offer 2-year programs leading to an associate degree or sometimes vocational training for specific jobs.
So more practical skills sometimes.
Can be, yeah. Or what's fascinating here is they often serve as a more affordable entry point. You can do your first 2 years of general education credits, maybe figure out your major at a much lower cost.
And then transfer those credits.
Exactly. Potentially transferred to a 4-year university to finish a bachelor's degree, so it's a stepping stone for many. Or, on the flip side, for others, that associate degree or vocational certificate is the goal itself, leading directly to a career. Very flexible.
That makes a lot of sense, especially with affordability being such a big issue. Okay, so for those aiming for a 4-year school, the goal is usually a bachelor's degree. That's the standard undergraduate degree. But how do universities actually pick students? We hear about GPA, test scores, but also this holistic review. What does that really involve?
Yeah, it's moved beyond just a numbers game, which is, I think, an important insight for people. Your GPA, your grade point average, basically your academic record from high school. And schools on tests like the SAT or ACT definitely matter.
Still important then.
They are, but they're usually part of a bigger picture now. Many schools use what they call holistic review.
Meaning they look at everything.
Pretty much your application essay, that's huge, letters of recommendation from teachers, and, crucially, your extracurricular activities.
Ah, right. The stuff outside of classes.
Exactly. Sports, music, drama club, debate, volunteering, maybe a part-time job. Anything that shows your interests, your passions, your commitment, maybe leadership skills.
So it's about showing who you are beyond just your grades.
Precisely. Colleges want to build a community. They want to see what you'll contribute, what kind of person you are, not just how well you test.
Okay, that paints a clearer picture. But let's circle back to the big one you mentioned, affordability. College is expensive. Tuition keeps rising. What are the real challenges and maybe the mechanisms students use to pay for it?
This is, maybe the toughest part for so many families. And it's not just tuition, right? It's room and board, books, fees, living costs. It adds up fast.
Definitely.
So students and families rely on financial aid. This can come in different forms. There are grants like the Pell Grant from the federal government, which are usually based on financial need and don't need repayment.
Okay, that's ideal.
Then scholarships, which can be based on academic merit, talent, background, all sorts of things. Also free money, basically.
Also good.
But on the flip side, many students rely on loans. Student loans do have to be paid back, usually with interest. Federal loans often have better terms than private loans from banks.
And how do you figure out what you qualify for?
The key starting point for federal aid is the AFSESA, the free application for federal student aid. Filling that out is crucial. It determines eligibility for federal grants, work-study jobs on campus, and those federal loans. It's a huge piece of the puzzle, forcing families to really weigh aspirations against financial reality. It's complex.
No kidding. That's a critical breakdown. Thanks. Now, let's shift gears slightly to the language tools. We mentioned modal verbs can, could, should. How do they really help in conversations about education?
Oh, they're essential for expressing nuance, like different levels of possibility or advice. Can just states an ability or option exists. You can double major if you want.
Okay, simple possibility.
Right. Could is a bit softer, maybe suggesting an alternative or a less certain possibility. You could consider schools out of state, or they could try for that scholarship.
More like an option among others.
Exactly. And should is for giving advice, suggesting what's generally considered a good idea. Students should visit campuses before deciding. It implies, this is recommended, using them correctly makes your advice or discussion of options sound much more natural.
That's really useful. Okay, and quickly, those common pitfalls. First, study versus learn. What's the key difference again?
Yeah, this one trips people up. You study for something or about something. It's the action, the process of dedicating time and effort. I need to study for my calculus test.
Okay, the effort.
Right. Learn is the result, the outcome, gaining the knowledge or the skill. So you might study chemistry to learn the periodic table. You study the manual to learn how the machine works.
Got it. Study's the input, learn is the output.
Yes, yeah.
And the other one, high school versus college in the U.S. context.
Ah, yes. Crucial difference. In American English, high school is only secondary education, those 4 years, ages 14, 18 roughly. College or university refers to the higher education after high school. So you are in high school, then you graduate and go to college, or you are in college. You never say you're in college when you're still in high school.
So don't mix those up.
Definitely not. Using them correctly just shows you understand the basic structure here.
Wow. Okay, what a journey through the system. I feel like we've covered a lot. From the basic stages, through admissions, paying for it all. Hopefully you listening now have a much clearer picture.
Yeah, and the language to talk about it too.
Absolutely. The goal was to give you that deeper insight, moving beyond just the surface level.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture for a moment, education isn't static, is it? It's constantly evolving.
True.
It's such a huge part of life, of how societies develop. And understanding these details, even the vocabulary, helps you think critically about it all, especially with so much information flying around. This really raises an important question, I think. How do people best navigate all these choices, balancing what they're interested in, what they can afford, what their goals are within this, well, complex system?
That's a great question to ponder.
Yeah.
And maybe a final thought for you, our listener. Given that education really is a lifelong journey, and frankly, so is language learning.
True.
How might the way education keeps changing around the world affect your own path, your career, your personal growth? And maybe what new deep dives might you want to take next in your own learning?
Food for thought.
Definitely. Keep practicing, keep listening, keep exploring. Until next time, happy learning.